Recently, I took delivery of this brand new 2023 Yamaha F25 Outboard. For today's video, I'm working out how to install control cables and set up the control box. At this point, I got it mounted onto the transom. It's using a 5-inch riser to get the bottom of the outboard exactly where it needs to be for this hull. If you guys are interested on how to mount a long shaft outboard on a short shaft transom, you can check out the previous video. It's super helpful and it came out really good. So for today, my goal is to get the control cables mounted into the outboard. We're gonna be figuring this out from start to finish from a brand new motor right out of the box. All right, before we dig into the motor, I wanted to take a look at the control box so we can route the control cables and wiring harness all at the same time through the front of the motor. Instruction manual, our side mount control, wiring harness already hooked up to it. Like we got a kill switch, mounting hardware. This looks good. I'm just gonna put the throttle box in the general place it's gonna be and route a wiring harness to the back of the boat, similar to the control cables. Let's take a look at how we put the control cables into the control box, and then we'll move on to the outboard. All right, so step one for installing the remote control cables is to remove the wiring cover. There we go. While I'm working on this, I don't want anything to get scratched up, so I'm just gonna put this down. Now it says to apply grease on the inside of the cable joints here before they get screwed on. About 11 millimeters or 0.4 inches. Let's see what the lock nut's sitting at. The lock nut's almost perfect where it needs to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply some grease on the inside of the nut here. This is marine grease. I'm gonna go ahead and screw this down. Okay, so the next step is going to be seating the control cable into the catch right here and attaching it to the shift arm. The shift arm is this bottom piece on the control box back here. Now that I know which one the shifter is, I'm gonna go ahead and label this cable in the front and the back that it's the shifting cable. That way we don't get confused once we're back at the outboard or at any other point. All right, this might be a little bit easier to see from this angle. So far, I have taken the control cable and slotted it onto this joint right here, so it sits in the groove of the cable. And then I have pressed it over the pin for the throttle, which is the bottom bracket here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take this, what's called a circlip, and slide it into the groove. If you can see the groove on this pin. So once this gets pushed down, so you gotta slide it on. There we go. All right, so that's in place. The boot is in place. The clip is in place. Great. Now it says to do the next one. Okay, so now I'm going to apply the next clip to the end of the throttle. Okay. Well, the cables have been attached. Let's just give this a try, see if it even works. And then we'll go from there. So shifting and throttle kind of work together. You got to pull this up to engage, and then I'm gonna go forward, and I'm gonna come back. All right, so if you look right there, I'm not sure what cable that's labeled, but it's one of the cables. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the throttle back, pushes it out. I'm gonna go ahead and push the throttle forward, pushes it out even further. Interesting. So this must be the throttle cable. Throttle, yep, that's the throttle cable. Okay, so here's the shifter. Let's shift into forward. Boom, forward. I'll shift in reverse. Boom, reverse. All right, so these are 10 millimeter bolts. We'll go ahead and take these out first. Slide the grommet and bracket out. This bracket is wrapped around this rubber ring that's holding onto the battery cable and this rubber grommet. The rubber grommet will come out of this bracket and open, and then that's where we can put our wiring harness. So the first thing I'm gonna do is move the grommet out of the way and thread the wiring harness into the engine. There's like a ring that slides over the connection and locks it in place. I got it pretty close, and I think I might be able to push it through. I think I got it. You can see right here, this will slide over the connection and lock it into place. It was really tough getting it past the battery cable, but I was able to just wedge it in there and then finally feed it through, and it made its way through fine after that. Go ahead and give yourself some extra slack. You're actually going to be coming at the connection from the back of the engine, and there's a little clip here to hold the wire. There's a slot on the top of the plug here that only goes into one place on the harness, so it's really easy to line up. There it is. Okay, so probably should have did that last, because now we have to figure out the control cables, but we'll still be able to get to everything. It's just going to be a little tight in there now. Now this is the grommet that the control cables are going to slide through. This one already has a hole in it, but I didn't realize that this was already cut. So I don't know if this was the dealer when he, prepped the motor for the first time, or possibly from the factory, but both of these holes are going to need to be cut out so the control cable can slide. I'm just going to go ahead and open this hole up just about as much as that, so both control cables can slide through this grommet. Now I'm basically following the same guidelines as the control box, where it said to screw these on about 11 millimeters and apply grease to the inside of the cable ends first. All right, see that pin right there? That's what we're trying to connect onto. So I'm gonna have the cable slide through, hook onto that pin. You see the hole in the top of the pin? That's where it's gonna slip onto. And if you can see it, it comes pretty much right where it needs to be. So now this is gonna slide right onto the throttle. Beautiful, okay. And lastly, I'm gonna slide the retaining clip onto the post. There it is. Now, as you can see, that has been clipped on in place right there. Now, to adjust the cables, it's pretty simple. Basically, that lock nut that screws on behind the back of the cable end, that's going to determine how far your cable sits once it's in the bracket. So we're going to have to put the bracket back in place, and then this will give us an idea of what adjustments need to be made. Throttle needs to just come, just a small adjustment. Okay, well this is almost in place, and then once it is, I'm actually gonna leave it off, and then I'm gonna work on the shifter cable. So now with the shifter, you can see I need to screw it in more. We go ahead and turn the cable in to tighten it back down. I'm happy with where the shifting cable is, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up that lock nut on the cable itself. I'm gonna go ahead and insert the pin again. Being careful not to drop this, because once it's in the bottom of the motor, it is difficult to get out. I wanna go ahead and give these cables a little bit of a test, just to make sure everything moves and functions the way it should. Shifting forward. Okay. Now that should be full throttle in this position. So let's see. Yep, throttle is not able to open anymore. That's good. Okay, so here's the rubber boot. We got the battery cable coming on one end and then the wiring harness on the other. Battery cable into the oval section, wiring harness cable into the circular section. You have the hook right here. This is gonna wrap around that rubber grommet. There's a little track channel it goes into. You can see right there. The grommet on the hook now. Go ahead and slide that into place. Now at this point, we should have our two control cables seated, which we do. And then once you have everything in place the way you like, there are two clips that come to hold these control cables down. So these slot onto the wire, and then there's I guess there's a clip that goes through the top of the holder to hold these in place from coming out. And they have little clips. Once you push them through, it locks it in place. So really make sure that you got everything else done first before you do this part. Now the control cables are locked in place. That looks good. All right, so now we have tested the shifting. We have attached all the control cables. We have routed all of the wiring and cables through the grommets. We have the wiring harness cable routed down and back up into the wiring harness and clipped in place here. That same wire is on its clip here and running around a stud. We have attached our throttle and shift linkage cables in the neutral position like it is now. The carb is completely closed, as well as the shift being in neutral. I've opened it and saw that we hit full throttle in the other direction. So at this point, I don't really think there's too much else we need to do. If you guys found this video helpful, let me know by hitting that like button. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. I got a lot more work coming up for the Yamaha here. I got to add the steering controls, I got to hook up the control box, and then I got to break it in and test it for the first time. So if this is something you're interested in, like I said, don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, drop them below. I'll see what I can do to help. If you have any feedback or anything I might have done wrong or something I could have done better, please let me know. I'm always open to suggestions. All right, guys, thanks for watching.